Right, good morning everybody. Come up here everybody, so you can hear me so I don't have to shout. Thank you. Well, first of all, thanks very much for coming to Fjuka Day at Aston, and it's a great place, and well, there's millions of fish here. It's just awesome. It's a great place. So anyway, we're here today. We want to promote Fjuka baits, to show you different things. We've got different things going on during the day. We've got a little demonstration area about colourings and flavourings and how you can mix and match everything. But as well as the bait, it's about the fishing. What we're trying to do is educate people about baits and fishing. Because the idea of Fjuka is to make it easy. That's the idea. It's not complicate fishing. When David first came out with it, it was quite simple. He came out with this bait, 5-in-1, and the idea of it basically, most anglers struggle with pellets, with bands, with spikes, hooking them and everything like that. And the idea of that, you can throw it in, but you can pick one up and you can put it on hook. That's the idea originally of Fjuka baits. Since then we've advanced it all with 3 mils, with bigger baits, with different colourings. But there's one thing that's really important with every bait that we ever do, and that's sensate. Everything's based around the flavour sensate. It's a fish attractor, and everything we do is based around that. That's why we do the sensate liquids and everything like that now. But it don't matter what bait you've got, right? If you're not fishing properly, if you're not set up and everything like that, it makes no difference what your bait is. It's not a magic bait, it just helps you fish and catch fish. But there's other parts to fishing apart from the bait. So that's the idea basically. So what we're going to do, I'm going to talk to you now about the basics of pole fishing. The basics. And there's a set formula, a set plan that every angler you go to will do on a commercial fishery. Now what I'm going to show you how to fish on the bottom and how to feed when you're fishing on the bottom. Might not be right today because a lot of fish are shallow, so we'll foul hook a few and things like that, but when Tom gets on it'll be a lot easier for him because all fish want to be this deep. That's why you'll see anglers fishing shallow up against the far bank margin or in the sides. But 80% of fishing is done in the open water on the bottom. So what I'm going to show you is how I fish on the bottom, and hopefully you'll take a couple of tips away which will help you towards your fishing. So the first thing I'm going to do is prepare my bait. Now we're trying to make fishing easy like I've just told you. Lots of places have commercial pellets, and you've got to use their pellets. Even though they're the same, you've got to use the pellets when you go to quite a few fisheries. So you have to soak them and prepare them the night before. But what we've got now, we've done this. It's called squeeze ready pellets, and we do a squeeze ready ground bait as well. And the idea, you can just get a bag, keep it in your bag until you want pellets. So when you go to a fishery or a river that you can use pellets, I just could open a bag. And if you don't want pellets, you leave it in your bag while next time. You haven't got to prepare them and then throw them away like most people do, including myself at end of day. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to get a bag of squeeze ready pellets, that's straight out of the bag, open it up, tip them in. You can see there they are, they're all soft, they stick together so you can put them on. If you go to our David over there, you can see he's putting them straight on in a feeder. They're sticky, they're soft and they're easy. You can squeeze them like that, make a ball, straight out of the bag. You don't have to mess about, and if you don't use them, you just put them back in your bag and use them next time you go. But I like to be a bit different, me. If you've seen my videos, you've seen that I colour my pellets. I like coloured baits, and one of the reasons I like to colour my baits is we have a different colour hook bait when we're fishing a feeder, especially like a pink one, a red one, a yellow one and a white one on the hook. So what I like to do, these are our 2-in-1s. I like to get an handful of the mixed colours, throw them in them, mix them up, and it just looks a bit sexier like that. And I think that's important. I do that a lot now, where I use different colours as well as the normal ones. And that's my bait, my feed for today. And then on the hook, I'm just going to use one of our 5 mils 2-in-1s like that. I've got white, red and brown. And you can see there, they're bigger ones which I'm going to put on the hook. In the winter, I might put a 3 mil on. when it's harder and the fish are, you're not catching as many, you put one of them on, it makes a massive difference. From not getting a bite, you can put one of them on and get a bite every casting, especially when you're fishing for F1s. And that's my setup, that's all that I need. When I say we're here to make it fishing simple, that's exactly all we're doing. So nowadays with these, when they come out, you put them in your bag, 2 or 3 bags in your bag, use them when you need to use them, when you're allowed, of course, on a fishery that allows you to use them. So, the most important thing, I can teach you, I can show you anything to do with there, but swim management is the most important thing about fishing. Where are the feeding fish in your peg and how do you get to them? That's the most important thing in fishing. 30% of fishing is preparation. Preparation, your hooks, your tackle, your bait, everything like that. 70% is where are the feeding fish in your peg. So what I'm going to show you, and Tom's going to show you another part, is on the bottom. Fishing on the bottom with pellets or Fjuka. So the first thing is elastic. I base all elastics around the size of the hook that I'm using. So the first thing is when I put elastic through the pole, I want it, when I tighten it up, I want it to be 2 inches shorter than the length of the pole that's inside. For a simple reason, it just goes back on its own. Sometimes it does, like that. It just goes back on its own. What you don't want to cut it so it's that short, if that makes sense, because what it does, it goes boom. Well, you might as well use the next grade of elastic up if it's going to be that strong and that stiff. So all I'm looking for is it just to creep back on its own. Therefore, I'm using the full elasticity of the elastic. The elastics I use, if I use a 14, it'll be with a 14 hook. If I use a 16 hook, it'll be a 12 elastic. If I use an 18 hook, it'll be a 10 elastic. If a 20 hook, it'll be an 8 elastic. So I base it on the hook that I'm going to be using. So whenever I go fishing, I'll think of the size of hook I'm using and I pick the elastic out for that style of fishing. That's what I prefer to do, because I know that elastic, it's no good putting a 20 hook on with a 14 elastic, because it'll just bump and it'll pull out the fish. So you've got to think about using the right hook to the elastic that you're going to be using. And what I always tell people when you use an elastic is don't be afraid of using a softer elastic. I don't mind elastic being stretched out, I prefer it than actually keep bouncing like that, because if it keeps bouncing like that, it's too tight, it's not long enough, and what happens is the hook bounces out of the fish. So don't be afraid of using elastic, because we've got puller bungs, puller kits and everything like that now to shorten it as we need it. So that's the elastic. I have a Dakar and connector, but I think most people do nowadays, but if you've got a Stomfo or that style, it don't make no difference. I don't think it makes a bit of difference whatsoever. It's just what's in your head and personal. The float. There's only 2 or 3 styles of float. This is just a normal float, like a long rugby ball shape. Most anglers use that, and I use that for fast fishing. When I'm getting bites all the time, that's the best shape, because you can move it up and down in the water. Just an upside down rugby ball shape is better for rivers or when you're leaving it in the water quite a bit. 3 rubbers on, 1 under the body, 1 in the middle and 1 overlapping at the bottom, just for strength and keeps the barrel or the length nice and tight. Because you've got 3 rubbers on, you don't need any shot under it or anything like that. But this is the key. Usually when you're fishing above 4 foot deep, I have a 6-inch hook length. So that's 6-inch hook length. And I have loop to loop. Reason why I have loop to loop is quite simple, it's the most practical. It's not the best knot, but it's the most practical. If I want to change the size of the hook, the diameter of the line, I have a breakage, I can change my hook simple. Then above that loop to loop, what I do, I put a number 10 stot. I like stots, not shot for commercial, because it moves easier, whereas shot ping off. 6 inches, then I have my first dropper, like that, and it's a number 10. And 6 inches above that, I have the rest of the bulk. And then the only 2 areas I have my shot. So, if you go from the hook, you go 666. And that's all you've got to remember, 666, and that's your terminal tattle. If it's shallower than 4 foot, I'll go 444. So 444, 666, and them's the only 2 rigs you need to do, and that's all you need to do. That's how you keep it simple. 666 or 444, and that's why I used to carry a ruler, but now there's a ruler outside of my side tray, so I can actually just adjust it and how I want it. 666 or 444, and trust me, you won't go far wrong. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to plumb up. So when I'm plumbing up, if I can find my plummet, let's find my plummet. If I put it back in there, once I've got my rig, I'm going to find my plummet. Let's have a look. That's the one. And when I'm fishing on a commercial, it's what you've got to find out is, are you fishing on a slope? Are you fishing on bottom? Are you fishing on flat, or are you fishing on a slope? Now that's really important, and you'll see why. There's a perfect example. When I start fishing, you'll see why. I am always looking to fish on a slope, and the reason for that is there's no silt. When you fish flat like that, it's always silt, and you'll see today what happens, because there isn't really a great ledge. But sometimes that makes you fish like on the flat. Now then, one of the most popular lines in fishing is what we call 2+2, which is top 2 section elasticated plus 2 sections, because that's usually at bottom of ledges. 2+2 is a massive line in match fishing. It's usually at bottom of ledges on commercials, but it's also the line where you can go like that. You can keep throwing bait in. So wherever you're fishing, like if I came here on a match, I'd be thinking, right, I've got an island, I'd want to start at the island, so I'd probably fish a method feeder to island, and I'd keep throwing bait at 2+2 like that, and then in the side. And them's my 3 lines that I'm going to be fishing. They might not always come at 2+2 early, and that's why you keep throwing it. But the moment I start fishing, I put a pot on, a little pot like that. But let's plumb up first and just show you what we do. Now obviously I've plumbed up, so I know roughly. So first thing is, you go out, and what am I looking for? I'm looking for what the bottom's doing. So I always go elbow like that. Always hold the pole like that, so your elbow is touching the end. So you're always going, you always feel, you're always going to the right spot. Not like that. I don't like to see that, because when you're holding a pole halfway up, because that's the weakest part, and that's what breaks. Whereas that's the strongest part, because it's a ferrule. So you ship it, feel the elbow, go to your marker, which is them reeds, and I'm going to lower it in like that. Now, the first thing is, I know the depth because I've been fishing. So I'm looking, is it flat? Go out a bit, come in a bit. You can see that that's flat. And all I'm trying to do is find out what's happened. Is there a ledge anywhere? And you can see there's no ledge. See how flat it is? And it'll just start coming up now. Not much, look. A couple of inches, not even a ledge. So there is no ledge, so we've got to fish on the flat. So if I'm on the flat, just make sure you've got a nice spot like that. I know straight away I've got problems. I've got problems because I've got silt. When you've got flat bottoms, you're always going to have silt. And once you have silt, you're going to have problems. I'm going to show you what the problems are in a minute. So when I'm fishing on the deck and it's flat, I plump at bottom of my bristle. When it's on a slope, I plump at bottom of the body. And there's a reason for that. Because when you're on a slope and it's like that, and it's slope, it's a different depth from there to there, and it's only an inch away. So if you go like that, or like that, or like that, you're at a different depth. So I plumb to there to give me a bit of security. Because what happens is, even though you might think it's just over, it doesn't lay on the bottom. What happens is, the bait goes on the bottom like that, and that finds its level. So it'll always be touching the bottom, and it might be an inch, 2 inches further out each time, but it'll always, what it does, it finds its little level like that, so it'll always be direct. But that little inch gives you a little security, just in case you've gone like that, or moved on your box half an inch. Massive difference. So when you're on a slope, always cover yourself by plumbing to that. But when you're on a flat like this, always plumb to the bottom of the bristle. And the simple rule is, if you're missing bites, take half an inch off. If you're not getting any bites, put half an inch on. So if you're missing like that all the time, just keep putting half an inch on. And take half an inch off until you start hooking them. But, like I said to you, I can teach anybody that. But when you're fishing on a commercial, one of the most important things is this. Is this length of line between the float and your pole tip. That is absolutely crucial, critical that you get that right. Now the first thing you must do is check the fishery rules, because some fishery rules are different, and they say you've got to have a lash of whatever. If it doesn't, all I do, I get a ruler, and between there, if it's flat calm, 6 inches. If it's windy, 2 or 6 inches, which is a foot, and if you're not sure, 9 inches like that. It's a short line. The longer the line, you foul up fish, your float moves in the water, and you're not fishing direct to your float. And you'll see why this is important in a minute. There's a big point which I'm going to show you when we start fishing.
No back shot, Tom?
So only when it's windy. When it's windy I might put a back shot on, but I try not to put a back shot on because it means I've got to lengthen that line. But if I'm fishing for roach and skimmers, then it's different. I'm talking about commercial fishing. But I don't always, I mean some people have them here and there. I don't get it personally. I've tried it and I can't get on to, but I'm not arguing with anybody about it, because there's some great anglers do that. But every time I put them, they get in my way. They don't suit my eye, and you'll probably see why in a minute. But I ain't got a problem with anybody that wants to do that, to hold it still, especially when it's windy. But it's not for me, I'll be honest with you. So that's my setup. The next thing is, I'm going to show you one of the most dangerous things in fishing. One of the most dangerous things in fishing is one of these. One of them. They are absolutely the one of the most dangerous things there is. Because when I take people coaching and show people, I'll say to them, how do you feed? Oh, I put a big pot full in. Worst thing you can do. And I go, really? When you put a big pot full in, you create two things. One, you're feeding the fish and you don't need to. Secondly, you're driving them nuts. You'll get that many fish in your peg, you can't catch them, you foul up them. The idea of fishing is simple. Commercial fishing is one of the most simplest things in the world. When I first started fishing, I learned a massive lesson. A massive lesson. I've never forgot it, I never will, and I teach it and I always will. Because 50 years ago, the best way of feeding were little and often. And in 50 years' time, when I'm dead and gone, it'll still be the best way of feeding. Little and often. It's always been the best, it always will be the best. I'm not saying there isn't a market for that big thing. For downside, you want to feed downside for later on to draw fish in, there is a thing. But when you're fishing, normal commercial fishing, one of the worst things you can do. The best thing you can do is a little pot. That's not even a little pot. And it depends on different times of the year. Now then, if I get that pot, which, you know, most people will consider that a little pot. But when I fill that up, so if I put that much in, look at that. That's like putting a method feeder on. Why would you want to feed off that much with fish? I mean, Can you imagine putting that at winter? You've killed your peg first cast. Right, there's a lot of bait there. There's more than you need to. You'd never throw that many in loose. So why would you put that many in a pot? And that's not even a big pot. So you can imagine this. I see people putting that in at start, right? Why would you feed them that? You're giving them free food. They say, oh, I'm not taking that one with hooking it. The idea is to make them competitive and fight for the bait and pick your bait up. When it's like that, they ain't going to pick it up. So, little pot. That one there, see that one? That's my favourite one, that. Look at that. Little and often. I mean, look how many's in that. Look at that. That's a tiny pot, that. Look at that. In there, well, I'll tell you how many there's 72. There's about 70 pellets in my hand there. So why are you going to feed them? Look at that. Little and often is the best way of feeding, it always will be. However, I know there's lots of fish here, and because I know they're going to be shallow, sometimes you've got to draw some fish down. So that's why I'm fishing that one and not this one. So that's my setup. I've got my pot on near the end, and you'll see why it's near the end in a minute. And all I'm going to do now, it's straightforward. I've got my rig set up, I've got it plumbed, I've got my bait ready, I've got everything ready to go fishing. But there's some things that when you're fishing, organisation is one of the greatest things. I teach people organisation. When I take people fishing, I get them organised at their peg. And what I mean by that is this. When you go to a commercial, you've usually got keep nets. You've normally got rubbish. I bet you've all looked at it when you've shipped out. Everyone here, I know you have, because I have. But you'll never do it after today. You'll never ever hook it again after today, because I'm going to show you how to stop it. So you've got your little net, you've got your pole, and you've got your roller. So everything's organised, everything's at hand where I can pick it up. My bait is there, my hook bait is there, my keep net's on my keep net. Let me just pull that up a bit, like that. So my keep net's on my keep net. So as you can see, everything's at hand around me. So all I'm going to do now, I'm going to get a pellet. I'm just going to put 5 mils on. Now, when you look out there, when I'm going to fish, there's no bubbles, or there's an odd fizz, but not a lot. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to put the hook into it and turn it onto the hook. Now then, what I don't want to do, what most people do, is they drop it inside now and fill the pot. And that's where they get the keep nets and they get the rubbish. To avoid that, this is what you do. You go up, you grab your hook, where is it? 2 inches above, like that, and you go up your pole so it creates a bow. You then put that on your knee, and you fill, or put what pellets you want in your pot. Squeeze it, not too tight, then go back down your pole a bit so you've still got that V, and watch. It's gone past all the snags and everything that's in front of you. And all you do then, you put your pole together and you go to your shipping area. When you get your shipping area, we've got some rubbish in it now, look about right. First thing I'm thinking about is feed. Forget about the rig. I'm lining it up with that thing there. You put it in water, lift it up, tap it, plop. And then you lift your float and you touch the bottom of the water with the bottom of the float for 10 seconds. It's called 10-second rule, like that. And what happens then, it's in a straight line with the bait that you've just put in, and then you lower it at fish. Now then, the idea of that short line is quite simple. When I get a bite, right where the float goes under, I don't strike, I just go like that, and if it's not on, I'm fishing again on that bait. You can't do that with a long line, you have to strike. Now you can see the bubbles coming up already from that ground bait. And what will happen is now we'll get lots of indications, and what will happen is you'll have to lift and move all the time. Like that, you see? The indication. And if you think it's a bite, just lift up like that. Good fizzing. That's from the bait. Now, if the fish don't want the bait, look at that. If the fish don't want the bait, you'd get none of that. But that's the biggest problem you get when you fish on the bottom in flat water. It's quite, you get all this fishing, they're in the mud and they're stirring it up, and that's what you get. That's why they're always very difficult to catch when it's like that, because they're in the mud. There you go. But I've pulled it back twice, but I was still fishing. Because what happens is, bloody English weather. So what we're doing now, we go back to routine. Oh, that was good. Just snap me hook. That worked well, didn't it? So all of a sudden we're going back to his routine. Let me get me, I need another hook now, sorry. When I'm fishing, I don't always tie hooks different sizes. I tie them one length and then I adjust them how I want them. So I'm not tying 4 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches, 10 inches at foot.
Fluorocarbon, Tom?
Hey?
Fluorocarbon?
No.
No?
No. I don't use stuff like that. I don't get fluorocarbon. I really don't get it, honestly. I've always thought with nylon you want it as limp as possible. Not as stiff as possible. And I just don't get fluorocarbon, I really don't. But, you know, you talk to some anglers. So again, we're back to routine. Hook. Like that. Go to your pole. Like that. Crikey. Put your pellets in. Let it go past all the snags and all the rubbish. Like that. No, I'll be alright, I'll change it in a minute, mate. Thank you. Get to your spot, don't worry about your rig. Feed. Feed's the first thing, like that. Tap, out. 10-second rule. Bottom at float, touching the water like that. So you've got to remember, lower it in. And sometimes what happens is, if like that, you see that went straight away, I lift it but I'm still fishing again. So what you're doing, you're getting more fishing time in the water. And that's all that you're trying to, the idea of that short line is you get more fishing time in the water. It's really important. And then all I'm waiting to do, and if I don't get a bite, especially this time of year, in winter I wouldn't, but in summer, if I go like a minute and I don't get a bite, I'll just lift it like that, hold it, drop it back. Just to see if the fish are coming in and they'll snatch it and pick it up. Now, you can see that the fish are coming to the bait because of all that bubbling and fizzing, which look, you can see it moving, which tells me that the feeding on the bottom, which is what you want. And it don't matter if you lift at everything, you can do that for everything all the time, but you're fishing again. Because what happens is most people strike and they go like that and they go, oh, bait's come off. Like that, so they've got to come all the way back. That's what they do. That's why when you've got a bigger line on, when you've got a line on, longer line, that's what you do. You strike instead of lift. And that's what happens. And you've got to come all the way back, feed again, put your hook bait on, and you're missing out on valuable fishing time in the water. All routine. Same routine. Like that. Over all your keep nets. Out. Ship out. Don't worry about your rig. Elbow, elbow. Line it up. Feed. Tap. 10-second rule. And it doesn't matter whether you're fishing there there, or across, it's the same routine. And all you're trying to do is put your hook bait in the feed, and that's all that you're trying to do. And just, oh, this is ridiculous. But all the time I'm getting these indications. I'm fishing again. I'm not striking my bait off all the time. Oh, thought that were on then. And what you've got when you get lots of indications like this, it's because the fish are in the mud. They're boiling the mud up all the time, but you see that's where they want to be. So in this case, you wouldn't, today, like when Tom does his shallow thing, you'll see that when the fish are feeding like this, they want to be shallow, you'll either catch it side or you'll catch shallow. Any questions, lads, while you're...
Oh, when's the rain going to start?
November. Just fed up with it, aren't we?
Does it matter what weight you put in?
I like it half ounce, 3/4 ounce on this type of water. I don't like a little, I like to feel it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry lad, I'm going to have to get a coat on. Have you all got one on? It's ridiculous this. Come back then, if anybody wants to have a go, they can have a go. I'm just going to get a coat. Chuffing wet through. Have you all got jackets on? Of commercial fishing. Right, anybody want to ask any questions? Don't be afraid.
You've got my eyes up, we setting up at rigs and stuff like that, because I've gone bowl fishing, dog fishing,
Yeah.
so you see the automatic instinct when the float goes down, it's the strike,
It's
when you're on pole, but obviously...
one of the things about the rigs is there's nobody fishes simpler more than me. I'm the simplest angler there is when it comes to, one of my sayings is, keep it simple, catch more fish. And I believe that. I mean, when you watch videos and everything like that, and I see a lot of these anglers who try to make it all fancy and everything like that, when you actually analyse it, that's what it is. But it's not just that, it's the way you put it in and lay it in. So like, I'll just go through routine again. Sorry I had to stop then. I think fishing is a routine. And all I'm going to do is keep using that routine. And the reason why I do this routine is because I don't get tangles, I don't get things go wrong. Everything's in a straight line, it's simple. Like first thing I do when I'm shipping out is elbow like that. Line it up, first thing feed. So you feed and then get your float in the feed. Now, one of the things to do, especially when it's windy, if you think you might not be on your bait where you're fed, all you've got to do is do that. If you touch water like that, that's where you're fed. So if the float moves with wind or comes in or goes out sometimes, like, look at that now, look where my float is. It's nowhere near the feed. Just bring it back and put it there. Just bring it back, just lift it up and use 10-second rule, and now look, I'm on my feed again. So, there's little routines and little ideas. And sometimes when it's really windy off your back and it blows your float out, just bring it forward a bit. So I'm using the elbow where I want it. Right, anybody any questions? Just throw them out at me.
You know, how you decided weighting?
No, I'll be honest with you, I didn't mention it. Now, I have a simple rule where I fish as light as the conditions will allow me to do. So in perfect conditions, like this is a 0.5, I've got a 0.3 there, and because I think the lighter you can fish to the conditions, you don't miss as many bites. But as long as the float is working well, like that one's working well, I'll be happy with that. Now, I see some anglers fishing like 3/4 or a gram, but you'll miss bites. So the lighter you can fish, as long as your presentation is right, that's what I always do. So I've got two set up, 0.3, 0.5, and it's quite simple. Fish it as light as you possibly can. And another thing I didn't mention, when I'm fishing, when I shot my float up, I always shot to half the bristle. So that's the basics. So when I'm at home, I met my rigs, and I shot it in the thing, I shot it up so it's just nearly a full bristle out, and then the weight of the line that you put on then will pull it down so you've got a minimum of half a bristle. I've got less than half a bristle, but I can see that all right. But I want the least amount of bristle I can see, simply because you hook more fish.
Tom, why aren't you fishing 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock? You know, you just chose the one line.
You can.
Demonstrate.
No, you can. You can fish. You know, at lots of times you can. You can fish there and there. This is just a demonstration, and especially when I go training and coaching and showing people how to do it, I teach them about baits and how. What I will do when I'm practicing, I might have pellets there and meat there, find the same depth, and have two different baits and find out which the fish want. So I do that as well. Is that Ben Fisking my way? So yeah, so lots of time, especially when I'm practicing, if I'm going practicing for a match and I'm not sure what baits are on, come on, right, I'll put pellets, meat, or pellets, corn, and find out what the fish want. And that's when I go feeder fishing to like if I go to Southfield practicing for a match, I'll do that. I'll have 1 o'clock and 11 o'clock with two different ground baits, just to find out what the fish want for the run up to the match. So you can do that. I mean, some anglers, like if you speak to Des Ship, he might have 5. But in my brain, I can't cope with that. It's too much for me. How he remembers it all. Ben's a bit like that. Ben feeds more than one line, but I'm like, I can't. My brain won't do it. I can't get it in my head. I forget where I fed. Oh no, I know that. But you can see everything I'm doing. It's the same routine, and if you get the same routine, but only if it's the right routine, you just get used to doing it. Right now, elbow, feed. Tap, 10-second rule. You can't believe how important the 10-second rule is. It's like that because it's in a straight line. Because if I just ship out, watch what it does. Lots of anglers do that. But how long does it take? Look where your float's nowhere near your feed. And then you've got to pull it back. Like that. Oh, bloody hell, and you're doing that all the time, so just hold it there. And you know that your hook bait then is in the feed. And you're fishing away. And that for me is the basics of fishing. Missed it, fishing again. That short line is so important. You can't. I think it's one of the biggest things in to help people get more fishing time in the water. Look how many times, it doesn't matter how many times you lift your fish, you know your bait ain't come off. You know you ain't got to come back and waste time. And I'm fishing again. So if I think the fish are feeding near the bottom and active, I might just lift it up and drop it again. You're moving your bait all the time, but more importantly, you're getting more fishing time in the water. Right, any more questions? Don't be afraid, lads. That's what we're here for today. Sorry? I've explained that. Yeah. You're not listening? No, I don't. Obviously. 6, 6, 6 and 4, 4, 4.
Is there any significance where you put the roller?
Yes. Good question. Where do I put the roller? Well, I'm going to show you now then. Now it's quite simple when it's 2 and 2. It doesn't really matter as long as it's behind you, but it makes a difference when you're fishing longer. And now that was, I caught that fish and I bet I lifted 4 or 5 times. It's a bit of nuisance that, Ben. I bet I lifted 4 or 5 times and still caught a fish, and that's simply because I lifted and didn't strike. Right, rollers. Talk about rollers. Now rollers are really important. The positioning of them is even more critical because it helps you fish. Because what happens is, most people have positioned them straight behind them, almost like that. When you're fishing 2 and 2, it doesn't really matter. But when you're fishing longer, it makes a massive difference. Because what happens is, when you get a fish, you go like that, and you're looking, and you have to put it, and you have to look. And I don't want to miss what's happening out there, and I want to ship it back like that. The most natural way is for a fisherman, is strike like that, and you go like that. Now that is 11 o'clock for a right-handed person. So if you're right-handed, position it at 11 o'clock. If you're left, it'll be 1 o'clock. For a simple reason, you go like that and you ship. And look at that, that's 11 o'clock. And it's a natural thing, you don't have to look, you don't notice. Now then, when you're fishing them behind you, what you don't want to do, most people put the back one like that. So it's near the end of the pole. And when they ship out, it drops like that, and what happens is your bait comes up. That happens all the time because they have the back one too far. So if you're fishing long and you have 2 rollers, it's simple as this. If you've got, the easiest way to explain it is like this. If you've got 9 metres of pole, 9 metres, your first one is 3 metres and your next one is 6 metres. Third, 2/3 way up the length of that pole. And that way what happens is, because what you want to do is just ship out like that and it don't jump up. And that way it will run nice and smooth, your bait don't come out, and it's as simple as that. A third, 2/3 way along the pole, and it won't jump up in the air. So that's the positioning of the rollers at 11 o'clock. And that's all it's as simple as that. Because the worst thing, and I see it, if you're going to match, a club match especially, half of the anglers will have the back one like that, right at the end. So when they go like that, it drops and it flops all the bait up. If you've got 1 roller, what I like to do is, I like it, if there's only 1 roller, whatever is halfway, I usually go 1 metre past. Just past halfway, and that way that just takes the balance. And that's the easiest way to explain rollers. But if you use 2, 1/3, 2/3.
I think the benefit of that, Tommy, is having your soft elastic to locate your rollers straight away. If you get too hard an elastic,
Oh no, you can't do it.
to get on it,
This-
you've got a really soft elastic.
The strength of elastic is massive, and I always go, if you're never in doubt, a little bit doubt, go softer. always go softer, because I want to see, well, look at that, I'm catching them there, 12 ounce to a pound, and there's that much elastic come out. But you just pull it against the elastic, and then the fish just comes up.
I find that with a nice soft elastic, you can locate the pole a lot easier.
Yeah,
when you've got
no, it's true, yeah, it's right. But the most natural thing is that. That's the most, for, you know, what ain't natural is to go like that and then go like that. So I always find 11 o'clock for a right-handed person and 1 o'clock for a left-handed person, and then you'll find it naturally. Because what you're trying, if you find things naturally, it's easier to use. You know, you're not making it work, it just works naturally. That way it's best way. Right, any more questions? Don't be afraid to ask, you can come and have a fish anyway now, whatever, we're going to just come and sit on my box and have a fish, if you want. Alright? I'm here all the time, so if you've got a question, just come down and ask us and we can have a chat.
Oh, it's back.
It's back, look.